Claire Pissell. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
When I describe you as that, I always think it's sort of, people go, oh,
yes.
I mean, Conservatives aren't doing very well in the polls right now. I'm not sure it's a good billing for you, but you know her well as a woman speaking great sense on many, many different topics. We have an awful lot to talk about. Let's get straight to it. First of all, I want to talk about inflation, and then we're going to get to Boris Johnson on our please state. Inflation has gone up from 2.6% last month, or the month before. Latest figures are for April, to 3.5%. It's largely down to household bills going up, because it's all part of our basket of expenditure. Your energy bills gone up, your water bills have gone up, council tax gone up by 5% for most people. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, the Tories left a mess. No one's denying that. But Labour Party said they were going to make our energy bills £300 a year cheaper. They've gone up, I think, by about £300. Water bills, OK, that's an ongoing, long-standing issue, but they are still going up. Council tax going up, I say 5%. That's a lot of 5% on, on your sort of, £1,600, £2,000 council bill. That's a lot of money. And again, you have no choice. You can't say, well, I'll buy less at the supermarket because prices are going up. I'll turn the heating down a bit because I won't have it on as much because the prices, the energy is going up. You have to pay your council tax bill. This is not good. Labour are trying to put a spin on it, saying, oh, well, we're not happy about this, but, things are better and it's going to take us a while to sort the economy out. How long is that going to fly, that argument?
Well, I don't think it flies very well with the public anyway to say, oh, you have to wait a bit longer, trust us, we're doing our best. Because I think the public are looking at what's coming out of their bank accounts on a monthly basis and saying,
they can see it.
How long is not very long? Because whatever you are looking at, your monthly income is relatively going to stay the same for the majority of people. They aren't going to have massive increases in a wage. And all of these costs, and it's not just the ones you've mentioned, but it's also things like broadband, mobile phones.
I couldn't believe it when I got, you're getting all these notices like on your phone company. Oh, by the way, extra tenner on your phone bill a month.
For what? So I looked at my mobile phone. It's like I do the same thing with it. They offer me the same service. The internet's not great sometimes because I live in the countryside, but I have to now pay 3% more but for nothing. So you've got all of that. You've got the food increases. You've got petrol increases. So for the Labour government to say they're here, it is. They're here for the working people. Well, are they? How about stripping away the net zero? Because then our energy bills might well come down.
I mean, and again, this has been totally debunked, the idea that, well, our high energy bills now are entirely due to, the gas market. No, they're not. They're not. Because if they were, then energy bills would be just as high in America, and they're not. It's virtually all of that extra increase is actually down to, the extra money we spend is down to all basically all the different surcharges and all the subsidising of net zero policies, which are just making us poorer and making our energy more expensive in the first place. Genuinely, I've used this word before, I'll use it again, it's correct use, insane policies. When you do something that mad, insanity is the answer. It's not going to go down very well. It probably explains an awful lot about the polling, and we'll get to that in a few moments. But let's also talk about, the answer to the problems that we've got, apparently, according to Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is that we should have a tax raid on savers. This is real sort of Corbynista stuff, which is people are really struggling in the middle classes and the working classes at the bottom of the pile. People on wealth, people are struggling really. And when you get food prices and energy prices and council taxes, like when they go up, that massively hits a bigger chunk of people who are on average and normal and low earnings. The actual money they've got to spend, they haven't got the spare little luxury spending. They don't have to cancel their second ski holiday. You know what I mean? No, but I mean that's the reality.
But it is,
And the answer is, as it always was under Corbyn, under the left Labour Party, the answer is always tax the rich more. And those horrible people over there who earn all the money at the expense of everyone else, they seem to think. She's come up with a whole load of different tax raises, eight different kinds. And she wrote about them in a secret memo to Rachel Reeves back in March, which has now emerged, clearly being put out by Rachel, I'm assuming by Angela Rayner's people. Well, I think by Angela Rayner's people to say, look, we're not in favour of this. Apparently, she is very unhappy about having to publicly defend Treasury spending cuts because the idea is the finances don't add up. £22 billion black hole and all that nonsense, and basically you can't borrow anymore, well, you can't put taxes up anymore, you've got to have national insurance rise on jobs. Basically, going to have to cut back on spending. That is going to upset a lot of Labour voters and, well, basically people on the payroll, whether it's welfare or people in the public sector. And so she's proposing tax rises of £3 to £4 billion a year, could be more. Things like people who are on the additional rate of income tax, so the highest rate of income tax, basically paying, not getting the pensions lifetime allowance they've been previously getting, changing dividends taxes, higher corporation tax level for the banks, all of this stuff. I mean, very popular with Labour voters, a complete and utter lack of understanding of how the private sector works and the motivations for people who start businesses, create jobs, take people off welfare, creating jobs who then pay tax by getting dividends. They don't understand why that dividend tax is lower than PAYE. It's because of the risk.
Yes.
When you leave a job to then start your own business, you often don't pay yourself for a year or two. I've seen so many friends and family do that, and then
their entire life is building it up.
And also, by the way, if things go wrong, you're the one who doesn't get paid, but your employees do. But you get the dividend, you get a lower rate of tax for a reason on that, because of that entrepreneurial risk. But she doesn't understand any of that. She's been in the public sector all her life.
But she also doesn't understand that by taxing savers, which is another one of her super ideas, it's just a tax on sensible people. So if you've been sensible and you've managed to squirrel away a small amount of money, Angela Rayner's going to come for it. So not only that, she's looking at
got more than £1 million.
Yeah.
But by the way, former Director of Public Prosecutions, who had an Act of Parliament to actually protect his pension, Keir Starmer, I believe we know him now as the Prime Minister, he's got more than £1 million in his pension.
Precisely. I wonder how happy he is about that. But it is the pensioners who are going to take the brunt of this. So if you're looking at trying to shore up your vote base, don't irritate the pensioners. You've already taken away their winter fuel allowance. There's 1 million more pensioners this year who are in the 40% tax bracket due to the fiscal drag. So 2 million
they
more
haven't got
pensioners.
richer.
They haven't. 2 million more are paying income tax at the higher level.
Yeah, I mean, at the higher level, again. Look, but there is a generation, and my parents are very much that generation, who came from, working class homes, grammar school, university, done very well, bought homes for 3p, which then become worth money. I mean, good on them. They work very hard for everything they've done, but they are the generation that got all the benefits that the welfare, not the welfare state, but the state provided. And the benefits of house price rises, which an awful lot of the younger generation don't get. But that's not their fault. I mean, penalising pensioners who've worked hard and done well seems to me to be a rather strange thing, because otherwise, why would people bother to do well other than, people want to save for their retirement and save, for instance, to help their children in the future.
That's right. So she's taking all the aspiration away from people. So anybody that wants to, as you say, be an entrepreneur and have that risk of setting up a business and employing people, they're going to be taxed to high heaven. Pensioners who've managed to scrimp and save, and yes, they have benefited from slightly lower house prices when they were buying. But again, they were aspirational. They wanted their own house. They built a family and they saved for their future.
They're not on the council house list.
No. Yeah. They're not causing us a burden.
There's got to be an incentive. It's got to be an incentive. I know lots of people who actually get help from their parents, who again of that generation, who are able to help them with things like childcare. So that they can go to work and pay taxes. I mean, again, these things just are totally not understood, aren't they? Let's talk about this in the context of where we are in terms of our this country right now, because a lot of anger over the cost of living. There's been a lot of anger over immigration. That story's in the news yet again. We've got, an Iraqi asylum seeker staying in Britain, despite telling the judge, I don't have a real reason to be here. Give me some time, I'll make one up. He dropped, didn't have his ID document, and of course he didn't. And also a story about an asylum seeker's dog, front page of the Sun today, in quarantine for many months at taxpayers' expense, came over in a dinghy. It's a German Shepherd. I'm assuming we can return him to Germany at some point. I mean, that's his heritage. That's all I'm saying. These mad stories. But so we know we've got the economy, we've got immigration. We have, NHS is still a big issue, but we've also got the issue now of, I suppose, culture and freedom of speech and two-tier gear. Kia is a really big thing now. And after that appeal by Lucy Connolly yesterday was lost against her 31-month sentence for a tweet she wrote immediately after, just within hours of the Southport attacks last year, Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, has said some extraordinary things. Bearing in mind, Lucy Connolly has been backed by the likes of Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, Robert Jenrick, and many, many others, basically arguing that, what she wrote was horrible, but But they don't think that she should be behind bars, and certainly not for 31 months. Just to remind you of her tweet, I was reading out yesterday, and I didn't read out the full tweet each time, but I still think it's worth knowing. Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bees. Can't read out those words, for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it. Often we kind of ignore the bit saying, while you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will have to endure. Now, part of that was the fact that she, of course, had lost a child herself, and therefore young children being killed would particularly be even more heartbreaking for her and visceral for her than even for most of us. Horrible tweet. I don't like it. Lucy, those words were reasonably can be read that you were racist. However, don't think she should have got away for 31 months. I think a caution would have been enough. I don't want people writing stuff like that. She'd already taken it down. People have done and said far worse things and no action whatsoever. But Boris Johnson has blasted the judgment as crazy and inhuman. And he said, Starmer's Britain is losing its reputation for free speech and turning into a police state where we must all learn to fear the knock on the door simply for something we say. The UK police are now making over 10,000 arrests every year for online comment, more than the police in Russia itself. And this judgment is yet another propaganda gift for Vladimir Putin. I've got some words to say about this with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, have you forgotten all that time when you were Prime Minister of this country? When, by the way, you locked us in our homes for 23 hours a day. You encouraged us to spy on our neighbours. You authorised the monitoring and the attempted censoring of online free speech by scientists of national, international standing at Oxford University and elsewhere, of journalists and even some of your own MPs. And little old me as well. I know you did it because I've won a formal apology from your government for having done that. You even passed my information on to a counter-terrorism unit in the United States. But now Keir Starmer's turning Britain into a police state. I think, Boris Johnson, you are suffering from amnesia because you literally turned us into a police state during COVID. And anyone who says, well, times were different, it was a pandemic, well, how about this? Non-crime hate incidents, they've been around since 2014, under the Tories. Boris Johnson was in power for a couple of years. Did he do anything to stop the rise of non-crime hate incidents? Not at all. They actually increased under him. Non-crime hate incidents where people get a knock on the door from the police, get a police record effectively for doing nothing wrong, certainly not a crime, the clue's in the name, but simply for saying something that someone else might perceive as being hurty. Boris Johnson, if anyone turned this country into a police state, undermined freedom of speech, undermined our civil society more than, frankly, anyone else in our history, it is you. How dare you say this? How dare you claim that this is a problem under Keir Starmer when it was a problem under your government and the government before and the government before that, and you did absolutely nothing to stop it. Indeed, you made it worse. Hang your head in shame once again. Oh yeah, comb your hair as well. Claire Pearce, what do you make of this?
I'm not sure I can add to that. I mean, a fantastic roundup of all of the things that Boris Johnson has done that he has conveniently forgotten about. Oh, no. I'm sure that we could have an entire programme on the wrongs of Boris Johnson. But this was a man who got the fixed penalty notice himself. So his own laws that he put in fined him.
Yeah, that was just for the cake thing. It wasn't for all the drunken parties. Not a single one of the drunken parties that happened under his watch, in his building.
But he locked us in our homes. He made councils lock up swings so kids couldn't play because they would get a virus in the outside, in the fresh air. I think I don't need to hear from Boris Johnson ever again. I really, really don't.
I'm still amazed at the number of people who thinks he's the great white hope. He's the answer to the Tories.
He's a splash on a newspaper because he opens his mouth. Why?
He's still a big character. I know lots of people. I've got colleagues who just absolutely love him. He's a busted flush. He did it when it came to everyone think, he was a libertarian. He's not. He's literally the opposite of a libertarian. He doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't even believe in Brexit. He believes in nothing but Boris Johnson. He's a fraud. He is a fake. I don't understand how much do you need to see of this man to not know this and to realise this. I'd love to hear from you though. You may disagree with me. I know a lot of people go, oh no, Boris Johnson, if only we had him back, it would be great. He says Britain is turning into a police state under Labour. This is after Lucy Connolly lost her appeal against her 31-month prison sentence for that tweet. What is your reaction to that? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts on that Lucy Connolly case as well. We discussed that a lot on air yesterday. Also, tax raids from Angela Rayner, inflation. I also do want to hear from you about another man who's very much the subject of my ire today, and that is the Foreign Secretary David Lammy. He announced sanctions against members of the Israeli government yesterday. They've also announced an end to trade talks with Israel over what he has called, in his words, the monstrous and intolerable military expansion in Gaza and the blockade of aid in Gaza, even though aid is now, we understand, going to be going in. My issue here is I don't want any innocent civilian, let alone a child, to die in Gaza. You don't. I don't think anyone. I don't think Netanyahu does. I don't think anyone does. Who's a moral human being. However, if a terrorist group had entered our country, had massacred families, burnt them alive, had raped and tortured women, strangled children, had taken hostage hundreds of our fellow citizens, refused to hand them back while they were tortured and kept in tunnels underground and starved. What would we be doing right now? And if we were taking on that enemy, and that enemy, by the way, says they want to do it again and they would do it every single day if they got the opportunity. Hamas leadership has actually said that. What's left of their leadership, because Israel keeps taking them out. They are refusing to hand the hostages back unless when forced to come to the table. They are still using their own civilians as human shields. That is the reason why innocent civilians die. They're not man enough to just put on a uniform and fight the IDF woman and man to woman. No, they hide behind young children under hospitals, in schools, under the refugee tents. That's what they do. That's their choice. They actively want civilians to die because they know it looks fantastic on the BBC News in the evening. And then people like David Lammy feel pressured to say, oh, Israel's the baddie. If that was us, and Israel or any other state said to us, no, 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 you have to give aid to the people who are among whom the terrorists are hiding. You have to stop striking missiles against them because there might be a civilian nearby where the terror leaders are plotting their next attack on your country. What do you think our reaction would be, Claire?
Our reaction would be an absolute outrage. Why would you ever allow that? But I suspect that a Labour government would follow along those lines. And that's what I find really frightening. You have a foreign secretary who is actively working against a democratic state.
The only democratic state in the Middle East.
Exactly, in favour of a terrorist organisation.
That's my thing. It's really, really simple. Whose side are you on?
Yes.
It's just you're on the side of the democratic nation state that is the victim of a terrible atrocity, and you are trying to destroy the terror organisation that said they would do it again. Or are you on the side of the terror organisation? So it's very interesting that Hamas actually issued a statement in which they thanked David Lammy and the British government for their stance on this issue.
I would be so embarrassed.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you?
I would just be beside myself if I had any praise from a terrorist organisation. No, they need to be annihilated and that's it. And we should be supporting Israel. It doesn't mean that you cannot criticise some of the actions taken. You actually, you should do that.
There'll be individual policies and individual soldiers who do wrong.
Precisely. But we need to not issue sanctions against individuals. It's just ridiculous. What is it going to achieve apart from giving Hamas
virtue signalling, giving Hamas more power and undermining Israel, but also it's a sop. It's a sop to the Muslim activists and Islamist activists in this country as well. That's what it is. They're more afraid about losing that vote than they are about doing the right thing. And by the way, we should always do both the moral right thing in foreign affairs, but we should also do what's in our national interest. Being on the side of the only democracy in the Middle East, our staunch ally, standing up against Islamist fascism, is absolutely in our national interest.